That Pac-12 realignment move is on the horizon. And 2 Texas schools? Pretty good idea.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Drama in the portal. Clemson is surging on the trail big time. That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at 5-Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. So, we're all sitting around waiting. Is the Pac-12 going to announce a media day by the end of March, or a media deal, that is? Oh, they could. Yeah, maybe. Are they going to announce their next target? Is it going to be media deal first? That was the indication that we last got is, well, they'll announce the deal. Once they have the numbers, then they'll go get schools. So let's just say, hypothetically, I think UNLV should be the top target for the Pac-12. It makes the most sense. But let's say that doesn't materialize. They decide to stay in the Mountain West because of financial incentives offered by the Mountain West and Commissioner Gloria Nevarez, and maybe the poaching/exit fees don't get dropped down as much as everybody wants to. And so they're left to go and find options elsewhere. If they were to go to the easiest edition, which is Texas State, that is the easiest option. Cheap, available, probably would be willing to go, maybe would be willing to go. Not entirely clear right now because, there was a brief conversation between Texas State and the Pac-12 way back when the Mountain West wanted Texas State, and Texas State said to the Pac-12, well, we're not that interested. But hey, people can change their minds really, really quickly when you're talking realignment here. So Texas State, if they're the easiest edition, pairing another Texas school with them would make a whole heck of a lot of sense for 2 reasons. Number one, the state of Texas is a good place to have a presence, to play in front of recruits, to get into television markets. It's a football crazed state, and it's just a place that you want to be a part of. It's a mecca of college and high school football, which is of course how we get college football playing from kids playing from the high school ranks, jumping up to them play college football. So that sort of exposure has some upside, not significant enough media upside, it appears, based on all the reporting to, alter the media deal to make it more attractive. But if you're going to go into the state of Texas with one team, you might as well go with 2 to make the travel easier. Because the reason I say UNLV should be the top target is they're right there. They're right smack dab in the middle of the Pac-12's footprint. Heck, they'll probably wind up playing their conference championship tournaments and games in Las Vegas for the most part. I'd imagine the football game will go back to Allegiant Stadium or somewhere in the Vegas area. I would imagine the Pac-12 basketball tournament, which will be pretty darn good league starting in 2026. I imagine that'll be in Vegas. So playing with UNLV in your conference makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. I mean, you might even wind up playing some games at their facility in a neutral site setting. That's just theoretical on my part. So that's why it makes the most sense. But if you're going to go all the way to Texas, if you're going to introduce that travel component for everybody in the league, maybe they don't want to go there, but they realize, well, got to have an 8th team. And, if we're going to add 1, we might as well add 2 to give ourselves an 8-game conference slate, which I think makes the most sense. Bringing in another Texas school lessens the travel burden. One of the obstacles to adding a team in Texas is the Pac-12 has said, and I don't know how steadfast they are in their commitment to this, but they've said in the past, yeah, we want to be a best of the West. There should be a great league or the best league we can make with West Coast-based teams. Well, you dip your toe into Texas with any schools in that conference, or in that state rather, into your conference, and you're throwing that notion out the window. Now, that's also adapting to the times because USC and Maryland are in the same conference. Stanford and Wake Forest are in the same conference. So that's the modern world. And that depends on how rigid the Pac-12 is, but also how legitimate the travel concerns would be. Because we have already seen USC, UCLA, and Cal publicly, and I imagine, and Washington's mentioned it as well, and I bet there's even more griping behind the scenes. The travel is not fun. Who could have seen that coming? I know. That's just shocking. Shock and awe, like when UMBC beat Virginia as a 16 seed all those years ago. I mean, who could have foreseen that it's not that much fun? Well, if the West Coast-based schools are saying, hey, we don't want to go to Texas, with several different sports all throughout the year, that's too far. But if we have to, we might as well have another school in the state, which brings up some interesting options. So if Texas State is your clear-cut number one school in the Lone Star State that you'd be able to add to the Pac-12, the other options are then North Texas, UTSA, and Rice. Now, athletically, UTSA is the top option. And geographically, UTSA is the top option. Do you know the distance, driving-wise? I mean, I guess it'd be that way flying too, but you wouldn't fly because it's so close. The distance between Texas State, the city that they're in, that's San Marcos, and San Antonio, which is what UTSA stands for, if you didn't already know. Yeah, it's 49 miles. You compare that to North Texas, which is an outside-the-box option, or Rice, which is also an outside-the-box option. From San Marcos to Denton, Texas, where North Texas is located, go Mean Green, it's 256 miles. Now you're introducing either a really long drive or maybe even a short flight. And Rice over in Houston, appealing television market, athletics though, I don't know. It's a good baseball once upon a time, 165 miles. So that pairing could be the most logical pitch to make to your current members. Pac-12 has got, and remember, you also are making this pitch to Gonzaga, who they're used to traveling for the NCAA tournament or for college basketball, marquee college basketball games and such. But you're making this pitch to everybody and saying, look, if you're going to go to Texas, I just think it softens the blow to say, hey, you're going to have to go out there, but you're not going to have to get on a plane, which is something that several leagues in this college sports landscape have to do, by the way. They go to a place and you can't just bus to your next school when you're on a road trip for 2 games. Sometimes you have to fly to the next school, and that's just not as much fun. But if you're just a 49-mile bus drive, well, heck, that's just really, really manageable. And so I don't know what the airport situation is there, but your drive time between the schools and how you're going to get from one hotel to the other for your basketball teams and all the other non-revenue sports, I think that's a much easier pitch. And from a football standpoint, it would also be the best option. I mean, UTSA is a school that going into last year, people discussed as kind of a dark horse playoff contender. And right now, they've made some investments into their athletics department, facilities and such that I think can allow them to be competitive for a while. I don't know that Jeff Traylor, their head coach, will be there forever, but he's really good. But they have shown, not just in football, but in other sports too, but especially in the one that matters above all else, they're capable of being competitive and winning. And Texas State's been on the rise the last couple of years. So if you're able to go and pull UTSA, maybe you're not, because they're in the American Conference. So perhaps they look at that league and say what, Tulane and Memphis said to the Pac-12 a while back, which is, thanks for the offer, but we're happy where we are. If I were the Pac-12, though, my dream Texas scenario of adding 2 schools, I'm a proponent of the Pac-12 adding 2 schools, not 1. Forgo the media rights money that you would get, by not having an extra school in there, to have an 8-game conference slate, get yourself the best playoff access that you can. I'm all riled up about this stuff. Texas State, UTSA, that'd be my dream Texas pairing. Who would you put in the Pac-12 from the state of Texas? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Drama in the portal, and a really talented guy is going back to Texas Tech? First, this episode brought to you by Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. And if you need a little boost when you're going about your day or watching whatever you're watching these days, 5-Hour Energy is the place to go. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine brings with it more time for fun. But sometimes you need a little boost to power through, whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, which is what I'm doing, or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. So if you're watching a lot of college basketball right now, which many of you probably are, but you need energy to stay up late at night because maybe you're in the Eastern time zone, 5-Hour Energy is the perfect pick-me-up to get you going the next day or keep you going that night, whatever you want to do. Head over to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store, which I do all the time when I need a little boost. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Check out 5-Hour Energy. So, do you know the name Micah Hudson? You might, if you're somebody in Lubbock or in College Station. You might not if you're somebody else. But Micah Hudson is one of the highest rated recruits in the history of Texas Tech football. He went there with all the hype in the world and all 5 of those stars next to his name, and he goes to the Red Raiders, and it doesn't work out. It never clicked. It was not firing on all cylinders. It wasn't an immediate, hey, this is great. Didn't work out. So, he goes in the transfer portal. He goes over to Texas A&M. And what do you know? He's now reportedly going to go back in the portal, maybe, could go back to Texas Tech. The Red Raiders feel good about their wide receiver situation. So they, I think, would take a guy of that talent level and say, hey, if you want to come here, great. But we're not in a pressing need. That's not where Texas Tech's been lacking. You know, they've been lacking in the portal. That's why they went out and got guys like Romello Height from Georgia Tech. You know, they're trying to beef themselves up in the trenches because they know the skill position guys and the offense that they've got running down there with Baron Morton. Like, they'll be okay. But I want to talk about the big picture ramifications here because this is starting to pop up in college football more and more. And I think it probably happens more than people, frankly, realize. And this is an issue on 2 fronts, or not an issue, something to address from 2 different angles. Angle number 1, Micah Hudson was a tremendously talented 5-star recruit whose film would blow you away. Every recruiting service and analyst and everyone that looked at him said he's going to be great. He's got all this potential in the world. He's playing wide receiver, you know, so he doesn't have to have all of the intangibles you need to play quarterback, for instance. He's just got to be able to go out there and ball. Not even those guys are 100% hit rate. No one is a 100% hit rate anywhere, at any point in time, at any position. You can have all the stars you want next to your name. Ty Thompson was a 5-star quarterback recruit a couple of several cycles ago. He is currently at Tulane playing tight end. It just doesn't always go the way that it looks on paper. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it, though, is this back and forth of he's at Texas Tech, he's going to Texas A&M, suddenly he's considering going back in the portal and might go back to another spot. It reminds me of what happened a little bit. I don't know every single detail, but from an outside perspective, what happened with Jonte Cook this past offseason, it was kind of similar, where he was at Texas, former 5-star recruit. He was there for 2 seasons, didn't crack the rotation because the Longhorns, wait for it, have a lot of talented receivers over the last couple of years. They brought in Matthew Golden from Houston. That worked out. Ryan Wingo is going to be the next great Texas wide receiver this season with Arch Manning at quarterback. So Cook goes into the transfer portal, and he's getting offers from all over the place. Oregon and other big-time schools. He winds up going to Washington. He's there for less than 48 hours. Now who knows what the future is going to hold. So I bring that side of it up to stress the importance of recruiting. And when you go out as a college program and you say, all right, we want to go out and, you know, try and land this many blue chip kids or, you know, get this many 4-star kids, that many 5-star kids, you know, you hear a lot about the blue chip ratio and does that really matter? The reason it does is because when you are recruiting a player of this caliber, if you're a school like Texas Tech and you can only get a blue chip or a 5-star wide receiver, you know, once every 4 or 5 years, you can still have good players on the perimeter. But if you have a situation like this arrive where maybe there are off-field issues or it doesn't click on the field or he's not settling into the situation or adapting to college in just the right way, what you then wind up with is you're going down to the next batch of guys. And if you haven't recruited the depth that you actually need, then you're going to have a significant talent drop off. And so, in the transfer portal era, high school recruiting's importance is minimized compared to what it used to be. It is still making up the overwhelming majority of rosters. I think that gets lost in translation all the time when you talk about high school recruiting, as I'm going to later on today's show, because Clemson has been crushing it. This is why you go out and say, look, we want as many talented players as we can possibly find, because odds are they're not all going to work out. But the next option that we have, whether it's a transfer or a high school kid we've developed or someone that we recruited who's, a highly touted guy ready to contribute as a true freshman, you got to have those options there. So that's another angle of it. But these sorts of stories, they also give me kind of Jaden Rashada vibes. Rashada was committed to Miami. Then he flipped to Florida. Then he was suing Florida, and he left. Then he went to Arizona State, and then he got beat out by Sam Leavitt. We saw why. Sam Leavitt, really good quarterback over there for the Sun Devils this past season, led him to a Big 12 championship and whatnot. Jaden Rashada, last time I had checked, still in the transfer portal. 5-star quarterback, still in the portal. Brian Smith has got a crazy stat for you later on today's show about quarterbacks and how often they transfer. But this is becoming more common in the NIL space. I don't know that NIL has anything to do with why Hudson has been kind of a nomad so far in his college career and hasn't been able to fully settle down. But I think that these sorts of instances are becoming more frequent because of the way the NIL space currently operates. Rashada is the best example of it. But what the rollout of the portal and NIL from the NCAA, which was, I believe, sloppily done, has allowed to have happen situations like this where behind the scenes, you have a lot of people trying to get in a kid's ear. It is an unstable situation. It's not always tenable, and kids can struggle to settle in. Now, they're a minute number of kids compared to those who are just able to find NIL deals and get contracts that work, or go make this amount of money to just play for this school and call it NIL. I mean, NIL mostly today is pay for play, but there are actual, honest to goodness, name, image, and likeness deals that are out there. Like I keep seeing the Flau J. Johnson ads where she's with the money company. I forget what it is, but like college athletes being on TV. Remember that wasn't allowed. That wasn't allowed. That's what it is now. So I think with all these changes and everything that's been going on behind the scenes, I think these stories are going to continue to show up. Sometimes it'll happen maybe with lower rated recruits. Sometimes it'll be with more high profile recruits. But when you roll out an environment that allows for a lot of uncertainty and chaos behind the scenes, I think these situations can start to snowball in their frequency. And I don't want to see that. So I hope it gets better one day. Maybe it will when the House settlement goes through and revenue sharing comes about. But, a guy of this caliber to just be out there and maybe returning to Texas Tech or maybe not playing football, we don't really know. We don't know what's going on after he'd already announced his transfer to Texas Tech, to Texas A&M previously this year. Hate to say it, but kind of seems like these are becoming annual stories. It's just a matter of who, not a matter of if they're going to take place. I think that's unfortunate. But for Clemson, nothing is unfortunate about what's going on for the Tigers.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
The hottest recruiting team in the country, the Clemson Tigers, over in the ACC, where they're probably going to remain, of course, for the foreseeable future. Brian Smith, Locked on the Portal, and a long-time recruiting guy here joining me to discuss. The Tigers have surged up to the number 2 class in the country, Brian. 7 commits in 5 days. They're rolling it in. Is this a sign that they're going to stay, or are they going to be a flash in the pan and, hey, nice run in the middle of March?
I think they're going to be right where they are in the ACC towards the top. But overall, I still think this is going to be a top 10 class. They're refocused on what they're doing. They've got Matt Luke there as their offensive line coach. They're doing really well with offensive line recruiting, and it's just better balanced. They had several kids come in on a junior day visit. Again, I don't care who you are. 7 commits in 5 days, Spencer, that's not normal. There's no way they're not focused and they're not hitting on the kids that fit their blend of academics, faith, and family. And, of course, they want big-time players. So I went through the list. I mean, like Naeem Burrows can play for any school in the country. He might be the most explosive receiver in this class to get him early. And then, by the way, even though he might be a 10-5 guy or whatever, Connor Solomon's 10-4. So, like, good luck covering the receivers. They got Barclay, one of the best offensive linemen out of Florida already. This is a great group. So I didn't see it coming. I'm not going to lie, but I think they're here to stay.
This is a Clemson program that has flashed into the upper echelon of recruiting before, but is off a cycle, Brian, where they just barely missed out on a top 25 high school recruiting class. And for some schools, that isn't as important of a metric as it perhaps used to be, because, well, you can always backfill with the portal and, bring in 10, 12 kids. But at Clemson, they brought in 3 transfers this cycle, which is a lot for Clemson.
Look out.
Look out, Deion Sanders. Dabo Sweeney's coming for your philosophy, or not. But for Clemson, they are still building the overwhelming majority. For the big-time schools, it's still a majority of your roster is built through your high school recruiting classes. But for Clemson, it's even more important. So do you think that that's at play here at all, that they sense, hey, if we want to have a roster, this year, their roster is probably the best in the ACC. They return a lot of production. They're the reigning champs, of course. But do you think that they have that kind of urgency about them where they realize, what, we are going to add a couple kids from the portal, but we're never going to bring in 10 to 12 kids. It's going to be 3 to 5. So we've got to go heavy into high school recruiting and land top 5, 10 classes year in, year out.
I think they realize they got to up their game some. Now, the key for them isn't who they sign, it's who they keep. If you look at retention, I don't know if anybody's even close to them, Spencer, as far as the programs that we consider to be title contenders. Who's second place to them? I couldn't answer that. That's the difference in why they can be like number 15 compared to like Miami will have a top 10 class, but they lose a lot of kids. It's not who you sign, it's who you keep. So with their ability to keep everybody in the fold for the most part, they're doing pretty good. So now that you up the ante a little bit with more talent, now it gets a little more scary, because not only are you replacing a good player each year at a spot, you're replacing him with the way they're recruiting with an even better player. So I'm not saying that Blondie's walking back through the door to be behind Cinder, but they're still going to be a lot better than they have been the last few years. And it's not just a circumstance they're going to be a flash in the pan. I think Clemson's going to make a little bit of a comeback here.
For those watching on YouTube, you can tell I wasn't listening to Brian's answer, and I was trying to think of who else is on the Clemson level of talent retention in the country. It's hard, because even if you go to big-time programs, Georgia, Carson Beck is now at Miami. Alabama, Caleb Downs went to Ohio State. Now, those are just single guys, right?
It's not really important.
But they're really important guys. And I mean, one guy can, in fact, be a massive difference maker, even if it's not a quarterback. You think about, a guy who Clemson lost to the portal last year, Andrew Makuba, was huge for Texas. Huge. And I mean, if he flips sides of the ball, Texas still probably wins, but I think Clemson would have rather kept him. But they tend to keep a lot of those guys, to your point. Oregon does pop into my head here, Brian, not just because I'm an Oregon guy, but since Dan Lanning has been hired, he flaunts this very often, and I think justifiably so. The Ducks have not lost a starting player to the transfer portal. They have lost guys. They have lost some pretty highly touted recruits. They have lost guys who have gone on to succeed elsewhere. But from the prior season, they have not had a starter transfer out who, was playing, top of the depth chart, essentially. So that's one team that comes to mind. I think there are others. Frankly, Ohio State pops into my head as well.
This last year, they retained real well.
It was all about player retention. And I think that, Michigan, another program where you don't really see mass I don't know what the plural of Exodus is. Exoduses? Exodi? I don't even know.
Mass exits.
Yeah, there you go. Just shorten the whole word. You don't see mass departures from Michigan or Ohio State either. And Clemson being in that realm, if they recruit at a top 5-10 level, Brian, I think they can push themselves back into that national championship picture within the next 2 to 3 years.
The only thing they still got to do, and you already touched on this, Spencer, they don't have to take a ton of guys from the portal. But when they go get somebody out of it, like you're going to lose a guy early to the draft or something, and there's going to be a hole somewhere where you just can't replace it. A pass rusher, an elite receiver, whatever it ends up being. Maybe after this season, Kate Klubnik's going to leave. This is where it gets really interesting. Dabo does not like, especially at quarterback, he wants his guy. What if he doesn't have a guy that's ready? And you know what I mean by not good enough to start, but like 8-4 at Clemson is frowned upon. And I'm being very kind. What if that's a situation at the end of the season and we start hearing rumblings about them with the portal, because high school quarterback recruiting is a crapshoot. About 60% of quarterbacks now transfer. It's crazy. What would
is it 60%? 60% sign?
Correct.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's oh my gosh, over half? Really?
Half has always been about the norm because there's only one guy that starts, but it's even 60% at the upper levels. It's insane. So would Dabo try to tap into that? I don't know. It's just something to think about, because even a program like Clemson, you're still going to have a hole somewhere once in a while. And if everything else lines up, you can't miss a quarterback. I don't care what program. It doesn't work. So there's just that little piece. But with the high school recruiting ramping up, they'll have to do less of that. That's the key. You're always going to have a hole. I get it. But if the recruiting continues like this, you'll have fewer concerns.
I want to go back to the 26 class for a moment, because right now the top 3 classes, according to 24/7 Sports, and it varies slightly but not significantly when you look at different recruiting services. USC is number 1. Clemson is now number 2. They have leapfrogged past Oregon. The Ducks are number 3. In the last couple cycles, Brian, only one of those teams has pulled in a top 5 class, and that's Oregon. Between USC, who flashed up around this time in the calendar a season ago for the 2025 class, and then came down a bit, still pulled in a top 20 class. I think it was 17th in the 2025 cycle. Between Clemson and USC, which recruiting school do you feel like has more staying power for this 2026 class?
Southern Cal. They hired Chad Bowden for a reason. I was told he got $1.6 million for a reason.
To be the GM. He came over from Notre Dame, right?
Correct. And after seeing Samote Karaanga this past weekend, among others, and he's their 5-star-ish edge that they just signed. I like guys that are 6'5", 255 with no body fat. Just throwing that out there. It's
hot take.
Yeah. They are trending in the right direction. They've refocused not just on taking one hit, wonders out of the portal. They got some busts. A certain one by the name of Bear Alexander last year in particular left them at the altar that killed them down the stretch. They've refocused and tried to recruit California more, which ironically, since you're a Ducks guy, there's going to be a lot more battles with USC and Oregon over the next 6-8 months, because USC was horrible at recruiting their backyard. Terrible. Heard some bad stories about that. Well, that's been changed. And it's not hard to recruit to SC. I mean, that city is massive with a lot of talent. Trinity League alone, there's 10 kids a year that can play at SC. So I'll go with them. But Clemson, again, they do it a little different. They take fewer risks. So when you compare them, and then Oregon, that's the hardest school, as I've told you a million times, to figure out. You don't know where their kids are coming from. They're wild. It's just fun to cover the Oregon Ducks. That I can agree with anybody.
Fact check true. I will agree with that particular sentiment, and that is how we wrap today's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.